Medical manufacturer Philips has agreed to a $1 billion settlement over its CPAP machine.
Personal injury lawsuits over a sleep apnea machine by Philips have reached a settlement of $1.1 billion. The Dutch manufacturer was subject to a massive global recall after the internal foam of the machines broke down and exposed users to tiny particles and fumes that users inhaled while they slept. The announcement is a step towards resolving one of the biggest medical device recalls in the industry's history, which has dragged on for nearly 3 years. After the announcement, Philips shares rose more than 35% to a one-year high. I'm Haya Panjwani.
The United States is stepping up pressure for a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Hamas officials are in Egypt to discuss the new proposal. Ahead of a visit to Israel this week, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken urges Hamas to accept the latest proposal, calling it an extraordinarily generous on Israel's part. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 146 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Don't miss the podcasts that matter. Now on the Salem Podcast Network. Dinesh D'Souza.
This is a game in which the conclusion comes first, and then you look for data, and then if the data is, quote, disappointing, you start fiddling with the data. You can often claim that the data says something that it doesn't really say. Why? Because the ordinary person never checks.
Seth Holhouse.
We have these agencies, FBI, CIA, Defense Department. Maybe 20 years ago, I would have thought, maybe they picked up on something, they got some intel, and they're trying to help us. But I no longer believe that very much at all.
And Jenna Ellis.
We need to be better prepared to understand what it is that the left is doing with their arguments so that we can be better prepared to answer these things and to have definitions that matter.
Subscribe today for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com.
Here's the Wall Street Business Report.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has opened an investigation into 2 fatal crashes involving Ford's Blue Cruise partially automated driving system. Both involved Mustang Mach-E 3 electric vehicles on freeways in nighttime driving conditions. Medical device maker Philips will pay $1.1 billion to settle personal injury lawsuits over its defective sleep apnea machines. Today's announcement is another step toward resolving one of the biggest medical device recalls in history, which dragged on for nearly 3 years. Stocks opened the trading week with modest gains as the major indexes were up about 1/3%. At the closing bell, the Dow gained 146 points to close at 38,386. The Nasdaq added 55 points. For the Wall Street Business Report, I'm Greg Clugston.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Some clouds sticking around overnight. We'll have a low temp dipping down to 60. Tomorrow, look for increasing clouds as the day moves along. The high will top out at 85. The rest of the work week includes high temperatures in the upper 80s. We'll flirt with 90 degrees, and evening lows will be in the lower to mid-60s. I'm Cal Moss with your on-point local weather.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, and fireplaces. Spring Sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point.
Please press button now. No, that number's bigger than the one I said.
This is Sports Talk with Phil Kornblut and Chris Bergen. Sports Talk is heard across the state on radio affiliates of the Sports Talk Media Network and is streaming live on SportsTalkSC.com, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. The South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number to call in is 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now, here are Phil and Chris with tonight's edition of Sports Talk.
All right, welcome in, everybody, and happy Monday to you. Good to be back with you here on Sports Talk after a very busy week, whatever it was you were doing out there. Love to hear from you about it. 888-898-2525. That is the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number to reach us right here on Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut in Columbia with Josh Cohen, Chris Bergen from the Berge Palace over in Sardis. NFL draft is behind us. What'd you think about what went down there? How'd your favorite team do? You don't know. You don't know. You see names, you see positions, you see sizes and speeds. You won't know. Some guys who you expect to make it won't make it at all. Some guys who you don't expect to make it will become all-stars. That's just the way it works out. But the draft is behind us once again. A lot of activity on the transfer portal, John, front. Some coming, some leaving. We'll cover all of that for you as well. Baseball-wise, I was able to take in all 3 games of the South Carolina-Kentucky series, and it's a great baseball series. Boy, I tell you, Friday night, fantastic finish. Saturday, tremendous game, and then the Gamecocks dominated on Sunday, so they picked up a very impressive SEC series victory over the 4th-ranked team in the country at that time. So the Gamecocks hanging right in there in the middle of the pack of the SEC with a chance now, if they can continue to play some good baseball, with the chance to pick up some wins this week. They have East Tennessee State at home Wednesday, and then they go play a Missouri team that's not very good. Of course, you go on the road, you never know what's going to happen, foreign environment and all that, but the Gamecocks can play up to a level that they kind of established this weekend. I thought yesterday they played an excellent game. I mean, offense, defense, moving runners ahead, strategy was excellent. Even Mark Kingston was 2 for 2 on replays. Everything went for them. But, Bergie, we had one of the strangest plays you'll ever see in baseball in this game when a 3-run homer became a 2-run single simply because the home run hitter, in this case Petrie, ran past the runner at first base who did not take off because he wasn't sure the ball was going to leave the park, and he actually sort of started retracing his steps from second back to first, and Petrie passed him on the base paths. Thus, what was a 3-run homer became a 2-run single, and Petrie was called out at first, sort of like as if he was trying to stretch a single into a double, scored 2 runs, and was thrown out at second. So outside of that, though, the Gamecocks played a heck of a game yesterday, so good series for them, and Clemson goes to Louisville, wins that series 2 out of 3. So the Tigers, they maintain their position atop the ACC, and they're going strong. A lot of offense on that Clemson side this weekend, but you got to wonder about the pitching a little bit as you start looking down the road into postseason when pitching becomes more of a factor and you're facing very good pitching and your offense is going to be slowed down some. You got to wonder if you can match it pitcher for pitcher. So we got all that to talk about tonight right here on Sports Talk, 888-898-2525. And Coastal Carolina, tough weekend for them, swept by Troy. But College of Charleston continues to do well, wins the series at Campbell. They're playing good baseball. We'll touch on all that as we move on through the program, Bergie.
It was a run rule Sunday, wasn't it? I know of 5 games that were decided before the end of the ball game, and that's just a quick cursory glance of the action around our area. You had all 3 games in our state yesterday were decided by run rules. If you look at Clemson, South Carolina, and also Coastal got run ruled by Troy. Duke with a run rule victory over Florida State, and Georgia Tech had a run rule victory yesterday as well. I'd be curious when Jim Tillman gets on later on this evening, are we starting to see a absence of pitching in college baseball, except maybe at Arkansas, where they've been tremendous. They just can't score runs, but their pitching's been so good it compensates for it. But, I mean, yesterday, you look at Kentucky, they just ran out of pitching clearly. I thought Dylan Eskew was outstanding yesterday for the Gamecocks. That's exactly what they needed. Clemson was okay. Billy Barlow started in place of Aiden Canuck, and I think it was sort of, to borrow an NBA term, load management for the Tigers. And interesting story coming out of that game that we'll have to watch when they take on Georgia Tech on Friday is Jimmy Overtop was thrown out of the game after a bat flip was deemed a little bit too excessive. So he was ejected from the game. My guess is, based on what we saw last year when Cam Canarella got thrown out against Tennessee, ejected from that game, it was unavailable to play against Charlotte the following day in the regional. My guess is Jimmy Overtop will not be available for game 1 of their matchup with Georgia Tech. May not matter with Clemson's offense as good as it is, but that may be something to keep an eye on going into Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know in the SEC, and I'm sure it's the same in the ACC, where you get tossed, then as a player, you sit out the next game. I think a coach like Kingston got ejected last weekend, but that was his first ejection of the season, so he wasn't penalized. I think coaches get one ejection, and then after that, the second time you're suspended for at least a game. So that's probably the case. It makes sense to me.
Well, it was so silly, too, because if you watch the game Saturday, Louisville had, when they made their comeback, the first two games were based on rallies, Clemson in game one and then Louisville in game two on Saturday. But I think his name was Hoy, was the player who hit a home run, and he spent his entire trot around the base pass letting every Clemson player that he passed know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to stay in the game. But then Jimmy Overtop, because the entire weekend was pretty chippy for Clemson and Louisville, because that was a series Louisville desperately needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they realized they had to bring somewhat of an attitude to the ballpark. And Overtop, I'll give the umpires a little slack. I mean, it was a bat flip towards the Louisville dugout after Billy Barlow threw behind Hoy to open up the ball game. So both teams had already been warned. But I thought if you're not going to eject the kid at hitting a home run and talking and, chatter all the way around the base pass, then don't throw anybody out in the other game. But I guess because there was already the early warning to both teams, they weren't going to stand for anything that might get a little over the top.
Well,
the pun.
We had a similar situation Saturday in Columbia with USC and Kentucky because, Blake Jackson hit 2 home runs on Friday, including the walk-off game winner in the 10th. He comes up to bat for the first time on Saturday, and he gets plunked. And the umpire warned both teams. And so Mark Kingston came out to argue, why are you warning us? Because he said, we haven't done anything. We haven't thrown at them. They hit our guy. So why are you warning us? I guess it was a preemptive warning from the umpires to try to keep anything from erupting there. So, it's that time of the year. Things are getting a little heated out there on the baseball diamonds as these races heat up and positioning is taking place for postseason play. So I think we're going to be in for a heck of a mayhem, as we call it here on Sports Talk, a heck of a May with baseball and, a chance for South Carolina and Clemson to still host. I think Coastal really hurt themselves with their performance this weekend by losing those 3 games.
There's no question. And matter of fact, they lost all 5 games this past week. So I think they clearly they were sitting, I think, projected as a 10 seed going into last week. I can't imagine they're still inside the hosting realm right now. And they've got another tough series coming up on the road at Southern Miss this coming weekend. They're in the similar boat that Clemson is, no midweek game because they've got exams. But I think you're now in a situation where Clemson's clearly locked in as a regional host, perhaps as a top 8 national seed, the way they're playing. South Carolina, I think the 2 out of 3 over Kentucky, that puts them in a really, really good spot to host a regional. And I think Coastal's got plenty of work to do to certainly make sure they're in the tournament first off, and then secondly, possibly get a regional host site.
Well, you look at where things stand after the weekend. Clemson with a 2-game lead on Florida State in the Atlantic Division, 15-6 to 13-8. Then you have NC State and Wake Forest, then Louisville, Boston College, Notre Dame. Then across the other side, you got North Carolina at 17-7, and then Virginia and Duke at 14-10 each. Then Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, Miami and Pittsburgh. And so, Clemson, they got off to such that great start, and they're just, trying to navigate this thing home as best as possible and hold on to their position. You look at the rest of their schedule and what they're facing. Of course, as you mentioned, exam week, so they're off during the week. They got Georgia Tech at home for 3, and then a game with Charlotte, and then they go to Wake Forest for 3. That's dangerous. Then a Coastal game at Coastal, huge for Coastal.
And it'll be the last home game of Gary Gilmore's career.
Oh.
I'm not sure Clemson wants to have to deal with that.
Really?
And it could perhaps be his last home game period if they don't qualify for a regional.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is going to be their last home game against the Tigers, the way things have worked out.
And Tigers finish up with Boston College. So, Georgia Tech's always a little bit dicey, though they're not all that good. Wake Forest was number 1 team in the country to open up. Their RPI is still 16, but I'd have to say at 27-16, they've been a major disappointment.
No question.
To this point. And then there's Boston College. So, really, Clemson could very easily sweep their 2 home series, maybe take 2 out of 3 at Wake Forest and finish up very nicely in ACC play, the way things are are lining up for them. As far as the Gamecocks go, it looks like they're pretty well set on playing on Tuesday of the SEC tournament as it stands right now, because the top 4 teams get the first round buys. And so South Carolina sitting at 11-10, Kentucky is 16-15, game ahead of Tennessee, and then South Carolina and Vanderbilt are tied for third in the East. Gamecocks would have the tiebreaker because they won that series, so they're both 11-10. And then you go to the West. You got Arkansas at 16-5, and then A&M at 15-6, and Mississippi State at 12-9. So really, the Gamecocks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're tied for the 6th best record overall in the SEC. So that would still put them playing on Tuesday in the single elimination portion of the SEC tournament to get into the main draw. But at least they'd be playing. They won't be sweating making the cut.
No.
But their schedule here down the stretch, as I mentioned, Missouri should be at least 2 out of 3. You got to go to Missouri and figure to take 2 out of 3 at the least. Then Georgia comes to your place, and Georgia's good, and they have a home run masher that you have to be wary of. But still, that's a series you can win 2 out of 3. Then go to Tennessee. And then I think you flip it. I think you have to hope to win at least 1 out of 3 there. Mm-hmm. If they can sweep Missouri, then go 2 out of 3, then that's 5-1. Finish, maybe finish with a 6-3 finish in SEC play. That put them in pretty good shape, I'd say, in every category as far as SEC tournament, hosting a regional, and then you go from there.
Well, I think you've got to look at the Missouri. You're exactly right. They've got to sweep that. Missouri has not been all that good at home this season, which is a surprise in the SEC where everybody is good at home. And then you get Georgia away from home, which is a godsend because the Bulldogs are 25-3 at home, 4-9 on the road. So maybe you look at that as a potential, if you can handle Charlie Condon and pitch him awfully carefully. If you can get around him, maybe that's a series you also have to look at sweeping. And then I think you're right, just find a way to get one win at Tennessee where they've only lost twice all year at home. I mean, that's not an easy way to wrap up the regular season for sure. But I think the next couple of series certainly play in their favor against a Missouri team that's just playing out the string. And then Georgia, you don't have to go to Athens. You get them at home. So the schedule worked out pretty well there.
I'd say 17-13. The Gamecocks can go 17-13 in league play against a schedule that is ranked 4th in the country. I mean, their schedule is just stupidly ridiculous. 17-13. I'd say you'd have to call that a successful regular season run through SEC play.
And 35, that would be 35 plus 1 or 2 more? How many more midweek games do they have?
Yeah.
They could get 37 wins.
38, yeah, right up around there if they don't, stub their toe these midweek
2 more
games.
midweek games.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward. I will give Mark Kingston credit. Not a lot of people give him credit. You got to give him credit because he didn't sit back. He made moves. He adjusted his lineup. He went with some numbers. They figured out that when they average 6 runs per game, that they usually win. And so he went with a more offensive lineup at the expense of defense in some ways. But you know what? The defense was not bad over the weekend. They turned some double plays. They turned some nifty double plays on Sunday, and they scored a bunch of runs over the weekend as well. So you got to give them credit for that. The thing, too, about that come from behind win on Friday night, the Gamecocks were 0-13 prior to that game when trailing after 8 innings. So that was their first time they trailed after 8 innings, and they came back to win a ball game. So a lot of good things happened for them. The interesting thing here, too, think about this. Kentucky brought out one of the best closers in the country to finish that thing off on Friday night, and he gave up 3 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy that came in
2 all year.
Yeah, this guy came in with a 1.25 ERA, a .096 batting average against. Nobody had hit this guy. He gives up 3 home runs. All right, so you're South Carolina, you win that one. Then Saturday, you're staked to a 6-1 lead. You got your best pitcher on the mound in Eli Jones. You got Matthew Becker to back him up. You feel real good, right? 6-1, and these 2 guys can't hold the lead. And they end up losing the game on Saturday. And then you run Dylan Eskew out there yesterday, and he was fantastic. So
yeah, he was.
The point I'm making is the best pitchers, the Kentucky closer and the Gamecocks, those two pitchers on Saturday, they couldn't get their jobs done when they were called upon to do it. That's a funny thing about baseball, ain't it?
And Mark Kingston, first off, I loved his answer to your question about the challenges. And he said he leans heavily on his players. He kind of reads their body language, reads their eyes. And if they feel comfortable, 90%, I think is what he said, he'll go with what the players tell him. And it worked out twice yesterday. But I love that answer. I thought that was a really, really good question to him. And the second thing is Will Tippett is going to be a fascinating study, I think, when he gets healthy and back out there, because he's clearly their best option defensively at shortstop, I think. LeCroy handled himself nicely, I thought, at short this weekend, but I don't think he is as good a shortstop as Will Tippett is. But Tippett can't hit. And as Mark Kingston put it out this week, he's looking for an offensive lineup at the risk of sacrificing some defense, as you pointed out. I mean, when you have Gavin Costas hitting in the 9 hole, that gives you an idea of how much offense he wants in that lineup. And Costas is starting to swing it a little better too, and maybe getting out of his slump. Petrie the same way. And if they start getting those guys going along with Messina, and who knows what's going to happen with when Will Tippett comes back, do you slide him back in there? Does he come in just to pinch hits and play defense in late inning situations? Because I'm not sure you can trust him with the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. He has not been a good offensive player all season. Let's give a tip of the cap to the College of Charleston. The Cougars have won 9 of their last 10. They're 14-4, tied with Wilmington atop the CAA. They're 31-11. Chad Holbrook getting it done, an RPI of 50. They got to get it done, of course, in their tournament because they're pretty much a one-bid league, aren't they? 1 or 2 maybe, or one-bid league, CAA baseball.
Check. Wilmington would be an interesting study. They're probably not very highly ranked in the RPI too, because they're 28-16. Charleston at 31-11. I just don't think either one of those is going to be good enough on its own.
Yeah.
And Chad Holbrook knows as well as anybody, don't rely on the committee to slot you in, because the committee has proven if you're not a Power 5 baseball or basketball program and you leave it up to us, you're probably not getting in. So go win the tournament, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Well, it happened to them a couple of years ago, when they had the great regular season and they pooped in the tournament and they didn't get into the NCAA tournament. Coastal's got some work to do. Tied for 6th, 11-10 in the Big South, 27-17. Be a real shame if Gary Gilmore can't get in the NCAA tournament his last season.
I was talking to somebody at Coastal earlier today about that, and they agreed. That's not the way you want Gilly to go out. You want him to have a chance one more time to take them to an NCAA tournament. But they've got to figure out their starting pitching, and that's been an issue for them much of the season, a lot of it because of preseason injuries. But they just got no pitching against Troy. And as good as their offense has been, when they run up against a team that can throw it a little bit, as Troy did, I tell you, Skylar Meade's another guy to keep an eye on. Former pitching coach at South Carolina. He's now the head coach at Troy. He has turned them into a darn good baseball team, and they're going to be in the NCAA tournament, I'm almost sure, especially after sweeping Coastal over the weekend. They could be a team you do not want to see in your regional, because they can hit it with the best of people.
Despite being where they are, though, they still have the best RPI in the league at 24. They play a very tough schedule, of course, and Gary will go out and play anybody, so we'll see if they can get that thing turned around. Okay, of course, over the weekend, Nick Pringle committed to South Carolina out of the transfer portal, John. So the Gamecocks add another state player, a native, to the roster, and a good player. Some people think he is a dominating player. I don't put him in that category. I think he's a good player. I think he'll give the Gamecocks maybe a little bit more versatility inside than what Josh Gray did, because Gray was so limited offensively. Gray could block a shot and he can get you a rebound, but I think Pringle's maybe a little bit more athletic overall and will get to the foul line. I mean, look, if he played like he did against Clemson in the Elite Eight, that game 16-11, yeah, he's a dominating player, but he hasn't been that throughout his career. He's a career 5 points per game, about 5 rebounds per game average guy. So we'll see if he picks it up and becomes a standout at South Carolina. But that's another addition to the roster here in the offseason. Of course, the Gamecocks missed on 3 guards out of the transfer portal, John, over the weekend. We'll go over all that in recruiting coming up in just a little bit. And our new poll question of the week. Give us your thoughts on this over the air, or you can answer on our Twitter or on our website, sportstalksc.com. A lot of chatter around former Gamecock quarterback Spencer Rattler in the draft before he was picked in the 5th round by the Saints. What type of pro career do you project for Rattler? A starter and an all-star. So not just a starter, but a starter and an all-star. B, a starter, but not elite. Just a manager, a team manager, game manager. You know what I'm talking about. A guy that can start, but he's not going to be a great quarterback for you. C, a career backup. Or D, out of the NFL in 3 years.
How much do you buy? I think it was Ian Rappaport that reported this over the weekend, that his appearance in the Netflix or the reality show he did in high school actually hurt him in the NFL draft because guys who watched that didn't like his attitude. I know Shane Beamer came out and said that was a lazy narrative, and Coach went pretty close to saying stuff on Twitter you don't want to say, but he was very vehement that that was not true about Rattler. And I just found it hard to believe that NFL executive, whether it be a general manager, a head coach, the president, whatever the case may be, would look at some kid, whomever he is, in what he did in high school, and that would have any bearing whatsoever on him playing in the NFL. But if I'm not mistaken, it was the longest drought between selections of a quarterback from the 1st round, the last quarterback taken, which was Bo Nix, and then all the way to Rattler in the 5th round. I think that was the longest drought of quarterbacks not being taken in the modern NFL draft, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised Rattler dropped to the 5th round, but I'm just curious how much that high school show he did may have backfired on him.
Well, I agree with what you're saying in Beamer. It's ridiculous if they put anything on that. He was a high school guy. I never saw the show.
I didn't either.
And so, but I know from what people have written and said in the feedback that, it was a kind of an egocentric sort of thing based on the guy. And he was a high school guy in Arizona and was being treated sort of like a prima donna. And how would you act as a 16 or 17-year-old if a TV crew was following you everywhere you went and giving you everything, all this attention, blah, blah, blah. And he was being built up. But you know what? He was all that. When he went to Oklahoma after he redshirted a year and became a starter, he had a great year at Oklahoma. Then, of course, he had a pretty good year going that second year until he stumbled against Texas, and they made the move to Caleb Williams, and the rest was history. So nobody who was around him at South Carolina from any aspect of his time in Columbia, whether it's on the team, on the coaching staff, in the media, in the fan base, had nothing but good experiences with Spencer Rattler.
Right.
I mean, seriously, the guy was a pro in every meaning of the word in dealing with us. That's all we can go by. And he took every question. And look, great teammate, it would appear. Great leader. This was a guy that got sacked 41 times and got up every time and never pointed a finger, never threw the ball down in disgust, just got up and got ready for the next snap. What more would you want as an NFL GM if you look at that video?
Yeah, I didn't quite get it, and I was surprised that was sort of the narrative, if that indeed was the case, that was running around, who, supposedly smart people. We're going to spend a lot of money on whomever they draft, and if you're basing it based, solely on what happened in high school, you might want to take a look at your job.
Yeah, really. Be right back. Get to your phone calls here on Sports Talk.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. On 7 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. The clouds sticking around overnight will have a low temp dipping down to 60. Tomorrow, look for increasing clouds as the day moves along. The high will top out at 85. The rest of the work week includes high temperatures in the upper 80s, will flirt with 90 degrees, and evening lows will be in the lower to mid 60s. I'm Cal Moss with your On Point local weather.
Hey, pool owners, now is the time to get your pool ready for summer fun, and at Jack Oliver's Pool Spa and Patio, we make it easy. We have everything for salt and chlorine pools, including chemicals, equipment, and accessories. But
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting police say 3 law enforcement officers serving a warrant for a felon wanted for possessing a firearm were killed, and 5 other officers were wounded in a shootout at a Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, we won't run all of them. I didn't cleaned it up. I mean, I didn't go in and edit it. Is that it right there?
Nah. As long as it stands itself up, I think it's all right.
But see, it's got to be this way because that's where the controls are. You would think that these little creases mean something.
They do.
What do they mean?
I don't know. That one's not very clear. Usually, there's one of the.
See, you would
experience the joys of spring in full glory as you cut through the
That works.
waters of Lake Murray.
That kind of looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From Marine 360. Take a look
You know,
at
you could use that for StreamYard, so you have your phone. Or other way around. But,
excellent quality and service.
Thank you for your thoughts.
has been the leading go-to source for boating enthusiasts since 2007, and they're based right
when you get a chance,
dedicated owners of Marine 360, Brandon and Scott, with their on-hand
I'll send it back out to everybody. I want to send out that vacation sheet so people will.
I think we should use one, and everybody can put their thing on one Google Doc. You mean do it?
Make a vacation.
Yeah.
Sheet, make it a Google Doc instead of having a.
Well, no, it can be a Google Sheet.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, you mean do that? I'll make one real quick.
Make your purchase even smoother.
If you want to.
For a variety of financing. Need more information? Don't hesitate to give the guys a call.
Got nothing better to do.
Yeah, because I tried to upload my vacation into that document you sent out, Phil, twice, and it won't save it either time.
Yeah, same.
It wouldn't save it?
No. It's fine. I'll make one real quick and I'll email it to all of us.
Good idea.
Flexibility and freedom necessary for parents to tailor their child's learning experience according to their unique needs.
Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s birthday today, or would have been.
73.
I wonder if there's anybody who's had more of an impact on a sport than he has,
Here's the
both in
question.
life and in death.
Would he still be driving at 73?
Who knows?
That's a good question. I think I'll throw that out there. Do you think Dale Earnhardt Jr. would still be behind the wheel at 73? And fast.
The time is now to support South Carolina students. For more information, visit southcarolina.com. Again, southcarolinaschoolchoice.com. Paid for by
How's your foot?
for Prosperity, South Carolina.
Okay, I just can't sleep. I've got this anxiety thing. I cannot go to sleep. I didn't go to sleep last night till about 6.
Oh my God.
I just sat up. I tried to go to sleep. I got up.
I went to bed at 6 at night last night.
Assuming you meant 6 a.m.,
I know.
not 6 p.m.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
I have this. I don't know what it is.
Am I speaking with?
I cannot shut down right now because of this cast.
Yeah, I'll get you on.
I don't know what it is. And
It's your buddy Sam.
if you give me sleep medication, that just makes me more wired. Who does the opposite? I got a
You know, I'm gonna
weird.
get some NyQuil.
Well, I tried. I tried some Tylenol PM the other night.
Yeah.
That stuff don't work.
It didn't do much.
Discover the easy way to save for college at futurescholar.com.
All right, here's the feed. Darlington's
Thank you,
on.
sir.
Yep. When are we doing Darlington until next week, until the actual race?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. The race is until
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks from Friday.
Right up to
It's
that.
a week from Friday.
to that Friday.
Okay. Are you going?
Mm-hmm.
Get your tickets now at darlingtonraceway.com.
By the way, the poll question, which is there for you to answer, 184. I just put it up a couple of hours ago. 184 votes so far. 42.9% believe Rattler will be a starter, but not elite. 30.4% say he'll be a starter and an all-star. So that's 73% of the vote believe he will at least be a starter. 21.2% a career backup, 5.6% out of the NFL in 3 years. So, got plenty of time to vote. Make sure you get out there. Let your voice be heard the American way by voting in our poll question of the week. Yeah, but I just felt all-star. Call it what you want. You know, you got my drift. Did you get my drift? You got my drift. Yeah, you got my drift. Okay. A couple of other things to mention, then we'll get to your phone calls at 888-898-2525. Let's update a couple of things here that are important in our eyes. The baseball rankings this week, D1, Clemson 4, Gamecocks 15. Baseball America, Clemson 4, South Carolina 18. Perfect Game, Clemson 4, USC 21. Coaches, Clemson 4, USC 14. Coastal dropping out of all. College of Charleston junior first baseman Cole Mathis, CAA Player of the Week. All he did was reach base 14 of 17 times, 11 hits, 3 walks, homered 3 times, scored 7 runs. That's a career. That is a career. RPI this week, Clemson 4, USC 11, Coastal 24, Charleston 50, Wofford 72, Upstate 88, Charleston Southern 150, Presbyterian 195, Winthrop 231, and Citadel 232. And let's see, former Clemson stars with the Jags, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. The fifth-year options on both exercised by Jacksonville. And also, former Clemson defensive back who's had some issues in the past has more. Bashaud Breeland, arrested in Charlotte for a second time in a year. He was booked into jail Sunday morning, multiple charges, including felony drug charges, assaulting a government official, resisting an officer, and injury to personal property. Boy, things have really gone south for him. 8-year NFL veteran, and things have really gone poorly for him. Clemson outfielder Cam Canarella, ACC Player of the Week, 9 for 20. That's 450, 2 homers, 2 doubles, 6 RBIs, 4 runs scored, 850 slugging percentage, 2 walks, and a 500 on-base percentage in 4 road games. So he had a very nice week. Mm-hmm.
He said the number 4 to the number 5 hitter normally leads off in him about as much. And so when Canarella's coming up in that scenario, if he's not leading off, he's probably up there with runners on base. Had a chance to 5 to him. I thought it was a shrewd move to move him down the order a little bit. He said that would be worse.
All right, to your phone calls. 888-898-2525, South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number. We go to Gamecock Larry. Survived his birthday weekend and more. Gamecock Larry, welcome in. I thought it was this past weekend.
No, it's Darlington. No, it's Darlington weekend, right?
I thought it was this weekend.
Larry, you tell us. Hey.
When's your birthday again? Oh. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, clearly. Oh, whoa, oh. Mm. All right. Thank you, Larry. Glad we could help you fall asleep because you got to be good for something. If we ain't good for anything else, we can help you doze off. I guess Thank you. I guess we're like white noise in the background there when you're trying to fall asleep. But we appreciate it. Larry sounds good. So the birthday, Josh was right. The birthday is the weekend of Darlington. That's when he's actually celebrating the birthday. So he's talking about having that barbecue. Where did he say in Vietnam and all that? I'm not so sure that I'd be careful what I eat like over there when it comes to barbecue. You don't know exactly what they're using, if you know what I mean. Yeah, like I was saying, I'd be careful about what I eat in those other countries because you just don't know. 888-898-2525. We continue with your phone calls on this Monday edition of Sports Talk down to Charleston. It's time for some Sam time on Sports Talk. Sam, welcome in. How are you? Oh, well, happy birthday. How old will you be, Sam? 34 years old. How about that? Do you feel 34? You still feel like you're 20? Mm-hmm. I bet. Well, can you tell me real quick? Can you tell me real quick before you get into something else? Whose city is it down there in Charleston? There, Sam. Whose city is it? Has he? Has he already taken over? Has Chris Mack taken over? Is it his city now? Well, now let's don't forget a couple of people that came before him. Now, yeah, you do remember a guy named John Crest, don't you? Is that right? The poll question of the week brought to you by Sam. Sam brings you the poll question of the week. In fact, you ought to send us some money. We'll put your name on this as Sam's poll question of the week. Spencer Rattler, will he be in the NFL with the Saints? Will he be a starter and an all-star, a starter but not elite, a career backup, or out of the league in 3 years? Well, I'll say this. And Sam, thanks for the phone call. We appreciate it. Chris, I think he's in a good place. He's going in behind a quarterback who's on the way out, a veteran guy. I think Rattler will impress the people there with his IQ, with his arm, with his savvy. And you know what? He's taller than who was a great quarterback with the Saints? Drew Brees. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a big guy, and he was fantastic. So my point is, I think he's in a good spot. I think he's in a place where there is a relatively quick learning curve and an avenue to the starting job there if he proves it, if he shows up and proves it. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got guys like Taysom Hill, who's more of a wide receiver, I think, now than quarterback, but sometimes they put him back there. But yeah, I think Rattler's got certainly an opportunity. They've got, looking at the roster this offseason, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, including Rattler, listed as a quarterback on their roster. Like you said, Derek Carr and everybody else. So I don't know that he's any worse than some of the guys that got there right now.
No, I wouldn't think so. And again, 5th round, Schmith round. I mean, you can't be defined by your round. Look at all the great quarterbacks who went late in the draft or went later than was expected. These guys are driven by that kind of stuff sometimes. And I think Rattler's made up of the right stuff to go in and prove that he's more of a 2nd or 3rd round type of guy than a 5th round guy. So the Saints may have come away with a real steal here. Time will tell. They may have come away with a real steal. Okay, thank you for the phone call. Hit the break on Sports Talk. Be back in a moment. Phone number 888-898-2525. We cleared the lines, so if you want to jump on board and offer up a comment or a question from over the weekend, love to hear from you. Keeping up with the NBA playoffs, are you?
15.
Got a big one tonight. Seas and Heat down in Miami, trying to take that 3-1 lead. Well, they did the other night. Do they play tonight as well? Okay. Be back in a moment.
Other than the 2 days that you already had posted, Phil, the college reunion on the 17th and your vacation on July 1 through 12th, do you have any other days?
That's it. I think the other one's already passed. Yeah, Passover passed. Yeah.
Chris, do you have anything? Are you going on the cruise same time I am, June 28th through July 5th?
No, I'll be out through. Oh shoot.
It's fine. You can tell me later.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just send it? Why don't you just
I'll send it out. I'll fill it in.
Yeah, let everybody fill it in. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. Only this Friday. I need you to do it. Next Friday?
Yeah, the Lakers and Nuggets are tonight.
Oh, good.
So that's the back half of the doubleheader.
That'll keep me up to about 2.
It's just
give you something since you're probably going to be awake till 2 anyway.
That's what I'm saying. I cannot go to sleep. I'm sorry, you were saying something?
I will not need you May 10th. Only this Friday, May 3rd.
What happened to your May 10th plans?
I'm driving separate, so I'll just go after the show.
That'd be great. Whatever you gotta do.
We'll see how
I can
this
see I'm
goes.
going to be facing a weird schedule with the term. My granddaughter is graduating from grammar school on Wednesday morning at 8:30.
They have graduation from grammar school?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
When are the media
Awesome.
days?
When or where?
When and where?
July in Dallas, middle of July.
Yeah,
So I'm going to have to go. If the Gamecocks are going to play on Tuesday, which they probably are, I'm going to have to go in Tuesday, go to the game, drive back to Atlanta after that, after the show. Unless they play early, get back to Atlanta, do there, go to the graduation Wednesday morning, then go back to Hoover. I'm really looking forward to that.
I bet.
Nothing like going up and down I-20. Talk a little bit about the race coming out of their hands.
Shall we dance? The official throwback weekend of NASCAR, May 10th through the 12th. Get your tickets now at darlingtonrace.com.
All right, we're back in Sports Talk Media Network on this Monday night. Phone number 888-898-2525. South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number. Have some recruiting coming up for you. We'll hear from Mark Kingston, and we'll hear from Eric Bakich from their games yesterday, the wrapping up of their respective series. Coach Jim Toman just a bit outside coming up at 7:35, and we'll get his take on the baseball weekend and how things are starting to shape up. Race yesterday. Of course, we're getting closer to Darlington. I can smell it, feel it, taste it over in Darlington coming up Mother's Day weekend, just a couple of weekends away. Good race at Dover in that you had
such a thing.
What, good race at Dover? You don't like races at Dover?
No, they're terribly boring.
Well, I mean, if you like, it depends on what you like. I mean, you're not going to get side-by-side, door-to-door, nose-to-tail racing everywhere. You're going to get spread out at some tracks, mile track, mile and a half, but you did have the reeling in aspect of this thing as you were watching Denny Hamlin roll along, and Kyle Larson trying to catch up, and he did catch up, with the help of lap traffic and some of the moves he was making to cut into the deficit. So it got a little tight in the last 2 or 3 laps. Couldn't muster enough to overtake Hamlin. Very good win for Hamlin. I can't believe he's won, 54 races now in his career, tied with Lee Petty, all-time list in NASCAR wins, and but has never won a championship, but he looks strong this year to get it done.
Especially right now. What's that, his 3rd win of the season, if I'm not mistaken? And the struggles that Toyota and Ford had early in the season, Toyota certainly gotten it dialed in. I don't know what's going on with Ford, but the problem with Dover is the race is too long. Dover is one of those places that should be
400 miles. Even 400
yes.
miles.
That's one of the places that should be 300 miles, and it'd be a whole lot better. But yeah, Dover is just not entertaining, at least in my opinion. Now, I'm not a NASCAR aficionado, as anybody who listens to the show knows. So, but yeah, I've never been infatuated with Dover racing. And normally when you go up there, Jimmy Johnson was going to pull home the win anyhow. So you kind of knew going in. I will say this, though. I give Denny Hamlin a lot of credit. He evidently said on his podcast going into the race he was going to win. He backed it up. So he pulled a Joe Namath on us and guaranteed a win. And good for him. But he's driving as well as anybody. And I think you're going to get to a situation where he and Kyle Larson and a couple of those guys are starting to separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
All right, let's go up to Rocky in Greenville. Our next phone call on Sports Talk. We approach the top of the hour. Rocky, welcome in. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Phil. This has absolutely got to be the quickest I've ever gotten on with you, and I don't call you that much.
Well, it's good to have you, and you know what? Timing is everything.
Absolutely. I'm calling quickly about the South Carolina baseball team, and I'm thinking about this team, and they're a good team. They're a tournament team. Now, whether they're a host team or not, I think they can be, but I think they got a little bit of work to do, and that's just my opinion. As far as that goes, they're not a great team. However, that being said, and Phil, you know, and as anybody, the history proves itself. You don't have to be a great team to get to Omaha or even to win it all. You just got to be a hot team. And I think that, I mean, you can look at the 3 times South Carolina went, winning 2 of 3. They weren't the best teams, most talented teams out there, or even going into the tournament. But they were one of the hottest, and you got to have, you got to have some breaks. I mean, that's in any sport.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. And baseball being one of them, you just have to get hot. And they've been inconsistent all year. If they can find a weekend pitching staff or something, that just concerned me because, you're 15, 18 games now, 20 or close to 21 games into the SEC schedule, and you're not sure about your weekend pitching staff. It raises an eyebrow, but they're still working. But like I say,
well, I think
I'll hang up.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I think that they might have sorted something out, and you might not like what they're going to do, but I mean, it's a pitching platoon. I think that right now they're kind of set on going with Roman Kimball and Ty Good as a combo on Friday night, hoping to get Kimball 4 or 5 innings and then Good finishing up behind him. Then on Saturday, you got Eli Jones. Now you hope he pitches better than he did this past Saturday, which odds are he will. He's a really good pitcher, and you hope that he can give you more than what he gave you. But you got Jones and Becker set for your Saturday. And then, Eskew was he was magnificent yesterday, and maybe he's going to be the answer as your third starter. That's kind of what they're looking at right now. Those 5 guys, and then, coming out of the bullpen a little bit deeper as you need them. Can that get you through a regional and get you into a super regional? I mean, those are 5 decent arms. I mean, they've got to all be on. They got to all be on the same weekend for you to advance. You can't have a bad start, or you're playing your way out of the losers bracket. So, but that's kind of what their pitching is going to look like here, I think, the rest of the way.
I think you're right. And let's face it, Kip Balknight is not walking through that clubhouse. So they don't have an ace.
Ooh.
I mean, a big-time ace.
Don't let him
walk
walk through don't let him walk through the clubhouse and see Cole Messina. Did you see what happened yesterday?
No.
Well, I mean, Kip is the analyst on the TV broadcast.
Right.
And he had said some things about the Gamecocks prior to the series with Kentucky that was not flowery. He was saying what he thought he was seeing out there. Mm-hmm. And when Cole Messina, when the Gamecocks won that series, Cole Messina took a shot at him on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. He, one of those, he retweeted what was tweeted from Kip and said something like, hey, showed you something this weekend or something like that, which, you don't like to see infighting like that in your family when you got one of the greatest players of all time in your program who's just giving his opinion about what he's saying, and then you go out and you prove him wrong. Well, that's great. Don't know it does anybody any good to go public and take a shot at him like that, when you're trying to have a nice family feel. But emotions do run high, I guess you could say.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Saw that this weekend for sure.
All right, we'll pick it back up after the break. Be back in a moment.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, and fireplaces. Spring Sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken faces many challenges as he meets with Arab leaders.
An analyst with the Middle East Institute, Brian Katulis, says there's a lot on Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's plate, like deals on military or energy. AI initiatives with Saudi Arabia. But first and foremost,
achieve a temporary ceasefire and hostage release, reconstruction aid into Gaza, a two-state solution.
Katulis says there have been good ceasefire proposals on the table, and it's Hamas that's been rejecting them.
And Hamas actually has the power to get to a ceasefire, and they're choosing not to do so.
Katulis says he thinks Israel eventually will have to accept a two-state solution. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Former President Trump has met privately with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
The Trump-DeSantis rivalry during the GOP presidential primary featured name-calling and insults, but the two men are trying to patch things up, and it started with a 3-hour meeting over the weekend. According to people familiar with the discussion, the former president and Florida governor are working on plans for joint fundraising efforts in the general election. Greg Clugston, Washington.
3 law enforcement officers serving a warrant for a felon wanted for possessing a firearm were killed, and 5 other officers were wounded in a shootout at a Charlotte, North Carolina home. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Johnny James said the officers were first shot at as they approached the suburban home Monday afternoon. He says they fired at a suspect in the front yard, and after that man fell, more shots were fired at them from inside the home. A suspect was found dead, and 2 other people were found in the house. On Wall Street, the Dow by 146 points, the Nasdaq rose 55. More at townhall.com.
Some investments involve a high degree of risk and actual results may vary. Oil and natural gas keep going up as the Russia conflict escalates. Get in on the major oil boom now and help the U.S. with your patriotic investment that can potentially pay you monthly income for up to 20 or more years. That's the sound of a producing oil well and the sound of a smart investment. If you're an SEC-accredited investor and have at least $25,000 liquid now, you can take advantage of Encore Energy's projects and a huge tax savings for this year. If you invest in oil and natural gas, you're allowed to write off nearly 100% of your investment in the first year. Goldman Sachs is projecting oil to go up to $100 a barrel, and natural gas is the fuel of the future and trading at record prices. Call 800-287-2691. Encore Energy is a major investor and experienced operator in its core area of operations. Call now and learn how to deduct 100% of your investment and create 20 or more years of potential monthly income. Call 800-287-6691. That's 800-287-6691.
NATO's chief says alliance countries haven't followed through in time on what they promised to Ukraine.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that serious delays in support have meant serious consequences on the battlefield for Ukraine. Ukrainian troops a tactical retreat from 3 villages where Russian forces have been making gains. Ukraine and its Western partners are trying to release new military aid that can help check the Russian advance across eastern areas. Russia is a far bigger country than Ukraine with greater resources to draw on. Stoltenberg said more weapons and ammunition for Ukraine are on the way. I'm Haya Panjwani.
In other developments, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, made an unannounced visit to Ukraine, the first British royal to travel to the country since Russia's 2022 invasion. And analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Some clouds sticking around overnight. We'll have a low temp dipping down to 60. Tomorrow, look for increasing clouds as the day moves along. The high will top out at 85. The rest of the work week includes high temperatures in the upper 80s. We'll flirt with 90 degrees, and evening lows will be in the lower to mid 60s. I'm Cal Moss with your on-local weather.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, and fireplaces. Spring Sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point.
Ooh, I like when you press that one.
Welcome back to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. You can reach the guys with the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number, 888-898-2522. That's 888-898-2525. Now back to Phil and Chris with the second hour of Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Okay, we're back. Miss us? Sports Talk Media Network on a Monday. Phil Kornblue, Chris Bergen, Josh Cohen. Don't forget that, of course, we want you to catch us on one of our great radio stations around the state of South Carolina, our newest affiliate in Georgetown. Great to have them with us, helping bring sports talk to that part of the coast of South Carolina, 107.5 down in Georgetown. And Rod Stalvey and the group over there, Welcome All Broadcasting. Great to have them back with us. And more to come. We'll tell you as things happen. But if you miss a show, of course, over the airwaves, you can always find us on our feeds, which the Chief Sports app, great way to find us, free app for you. A lot of great programs on the Chief Sports app, both live programs and podcasted programs. Everything we do is put in a podcast form a few minutes after the show is over, so you can go back and listen. Our podcasts are hosted at Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and it used to be Google Podcasts, but that's gone away. Google's become, I think that's merged with YouTube, some kind of a YouTube thing.
Yeah, they have YouTube podcasts now.
Yeah, so if you look hard enough, you can find it. So it's out there, and check that out. Also, want to remind you that now is the time to make your plans for that summer vacation getaway. If you want to go to the coast of South Carolina, let Jimmy Smith and the folks at James Smith Real Estate help you find that great location at the right price for you. Here's their number, 843-237-4246, 843-237-4246, pauliesvacationrentals.com. Go ahead and make your plans today to get away to the beach. Who doesn't love to walk on the Grand Strand, have the Atlantic Ocean, the cool, crisp waters of the Atlantic run across your feet, Chris? I know you do it often as you have your vacation home in Georgetown and you walk the Grand Strand often, and come back as a new man every time you go down there.
Very few beaches better than the ones we have in South Carolina. So take full advantage. But I would request and beg you folks, if you're planning to come to the coast, make plans now. Don't wait until late May, early June, because everything will be gone.
Yeah. Yeah, if you delay, you won't find what you're looking for. So let Jimmy help you out. 843-237-4246. He has helped thousands of people find what they're looking for along the Grand Strand. All right, back to Greenville, continuing with our phone calls. And thanks to Rocky for calling in. I think we answered everything with him. And I understand what he was saying, Chris. I mean, yeah, this isn't from a South Carolina team standpoint, it's not a great team, but it's a good team, and I think it's a good enough team. I don't think it's a team that you can take for granted. If you meet them in the postseason, they're going to be a tough out for somebody, or, I mean, they might just win a thing or two.
Well, if you look at the history of Gamecock baseball, I think Rocky was right. I mean, the teams that have won national championships for them were really, really good teams. But I think Ray Tanner would tell you that 2000 bunch, that 2001 bunch, probably his best teams. And they didn't make it to Omaha. It's just the way things shake out, and you run into hot baseball teams, and that game can turn in a moment. I mean, you look back to this weekend. They probably should have lost Friday. They won Friday. They probably should have won Saturday. They lost Saturday. So, I mean, it's the way the season goes. And whoever, I think, at this point in time, Phil, has enough pitching to get into the postseason is going to be the team to watch. And I think that's why you've got to really like what Arkansas has done. They've struggled to score, but it's awfully hard to score against them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, their pitching has been outstanding, which is one thing that, again, I know Clemson's having a fantastic year at 34-9, 15-6 in league play. But, I mean, look at they won yesterday, but they gave up 7 runs. They lost on Saturday, and they gave up 7 runs. They won on Friday, but they gave up 11 runs. They lost to Georgia. They gave up 4 runs, gave up 8 runs to Pittsburgh. I wonder a little bit about Clemson's pitching over the long run of the ACC tournament and then into regional play. Do you think that they have enough pitching? And you mentioned Canuck didn't pitch yesterday.
Right.
Management, you wonder, young guy, how his arm is feeling at this point. How much can they push him? How much can they expect to get out of him?
Well, he's pitched more innings than anybody else on their roster, so I thought it was probably a pretty good move by Eric Mackich, figuring let's give him a weekend off. I'm sure he threw on the side, but give him the weekend off, let him rest his arm a little bit. They're going to need him. And I'm curious, when they get into the postseason, let's take the first game of the regional. They're probably going to play a 4 seed. So do you run Darden out and let him take that start? And then is Canuck your ace in the postseason? Is he your Friday night guy, so to speak? Or how are they going to handle that early portion of the pitching rotation? Because the backside of it has worked out really well. Darden and Canuck normally have been very, very solid on the weekend. Now, do they flip-flop and let Canuck be the guy who would perhaps, if Clemson can figure out a way to do something they have not done in a long time, and that's get out of a regional, do you run a freshman out there who's been your best pitcher by far? Would he start game 1 of a super? I don't know the answer to that.
A lot to put on a guy.
I agree.
A lot to put on a guy. I think one thing is for certain as we look ahead, Clemson will be in position if they win to host a super. South Carolina, again, if they happen to host a regional at the very least or get in a regional, they're going to have to travel somewhere
I would think so.
to play a super at this particular time. So the road ahead will be a little bit more difficult for them. Let's go to Ron in Greenville. Next phone call here on Sports Talk. And welcome in, Ron. How are you, sir?
Hey, Phil, I'm doing great. How you doing?
Man, we're fantastic.
Good. Hope game's out there. You're doing okay. I heard you say that South Carolina beat the number 4 team in the nation this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's pretty good. They split. They beat Kentucky, but they got swept by Clemson, so that's good. Not going to comment on that?
You mean when the Gamecocks were swept by Clemson earlier in the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They did.
Okay.
They were swept by Clemson in the 2 games they played, but they did beat Kentucky this past weekend.
So they split. Okay. Chris.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to get a connect. I don't think one has anything to do with the other, in that because they played Clemson in March and now they played Kentucky here at the end of April. I mean, 2 different series. Yeah, Clemson beat them straight up 2-0, but the Gamecocks get credit for beating a 4th-ranked Kentucky team this weekend. I don't want to take anything away from what they did this weekend.
Okay. I've been going to Clemson baseball games forever, as you probably know, but I have never, and I say this sincerely, I have never seen a Clemson team hit the ball the way they did yesterday against Louisville. Chris, have you ever seen anything like that?
They've been terrific. Offensively, that's not an issue for them. They have just been outstanding. I mean, you've got 4 guys who hit over 300 in their starting lineup, and then you can bring some guys off the bench that have hit well. And Jacob Jarrell, I think, is one of those guys they may have to rely on a little bit this weekend, depending on the Overtop's availability on Friday. But no, I think you're right, Ron. I mean, they have just smacked the baseball all over the place. You don't score 17 runs by accident.
No, that's true. And you were talking about Spencer Strider. I'm sorry. The quarterback for South Carolina.
Yeah, Rattler.
Yeah, Rattler.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he'll be gone in 3 years.
Out of the league in 3 years.
Yeah, I've just never been impressed with him.
Why not? Besides the fact he wears garnet and black.
No, and that's one reason, of course, but one of the main reasons is if he does he's not going to try to run in the NFL because they'll be waiting on him. And I believe he got sacked a bunch of times. And in the NFL, if he gets hit, there's going to be sometimes he's not going to get up.
Well, this is true. Now, I don't know that they're bigger, faster. But he took some shots in college now. And he got up off the turf every time. So,
and you would hope the Saints' offensive line, if he does get a chance to play behind it, is going to be considerably better than the offensive line he played behind at Carolina this year.
No doubt. No doubt. Hey, Ron, I got this thing. I don't think you sent it to me, but I want to share it with you. I can't remember who sent this to me. Somebody sent me a cover of a magazine or a story. No, it's an advertisement. I think it was an advertisement. Maybe in the Clemson football program, the incredible broadcasting team. WFBC. And
Jim Phillips.
I don't remember the years, yeah. But, yeah, you got Jim Phillips, and then I see Russ Castle behind him.
Wow.
And then I see there's four guys. There's Jim kneeling on the turf, looking young and spry. And then there's four guys sort of in a, not quite a semicircle, but behind him. But Russ Castle is one. I love Russ Castle. And then the other was, one of the others was, Shannon. Do you remember him? Scott Shannon.
Yeah, I remember Scott Shannon. He used to, I think, be at WQOK radio, but Russ Castle, he's still living.
No, unfortunately he's not. Neither is Scott.
He's not?
Neither is Scott. I don't recognize the other two people in the picture, but I was just going to say that that broadcasting crew and the program that they put on. First of all, their pregame show. They were one of the pioneers of the 3-hour pregame show. Russ Castle, Jane Robelo eventually joined it, and it was, of course, must listen to radio if you're going to a Clemson game. But the fifth quarter, I know you remember it well. What a great football post game, maybe the best ever on radio was the fifth quarter that the Clemson radio network did back in the day. I remember they would have reports from almost every game in the country. Almost every game in the country, they had somebody lined up to call in reports. Fantastic. This just came to mind as I was talking to you because I know you remember these guys and knew these guys back in the day.
I went to Virginia one year to a football game, and those stupid Ron just took shorts and everything. And it was real cold, and almost they called for snow. And Russ Castle come out there and handed me a jacket. I appreciated that.
He was as good a guy as there was. I tell you what, good as guy as there was. Hey, good talking to you, Ron. Have a good one, man. Good talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya. Chris, do you remember those broadcasts by Clemson?
Absolutely. I remember all those guys that you referenced, and I do remember the fifth quarter show. Really good stuff. Really good radio. Stuff you can't do anymore, or excuse me, stuff that corporate radio won't do anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because fans ate that stuff up.
Well,
that's all they want to listen to, sitting out in the car on the ride home from the game. And if you went to a home game at Clemson, let's face it, you're not going anywhere fast. So you might as well have something to listen to trying to get out of there.
And it was an honor. It was an honor to be on the fifth quarter, to be the reporter from the game you were at on the fifth quarter. So, yeah, that was they were well ahead of their time.
I agree.
With programming ingenuity and the way they carried that off. Okay, we'll hit the break. Be back with more. Some Mark Kingston coming up momentarily here on Sports Talk. Don't go away.
Relax with an auto loan from Founders Federal Credit Union. Here at Founders, we understand that it's more than just a vehicle. It's a part of your life's journey, from hobbies changing to families growing. It's with you along the way. Our fixed rates can get you in a ride that fits your life. Not sure what you want? Apply early for a pre-approved spending limit so you know what to look for before you start shopping. Head over to one of our 41 convenient office locations or visit foundersfcu.com to apply for an auto loan today. Federally insured by NCUA. Membership qualification required. Terms and conditions apply.
Calling all turkey hunters, this is Major Billy Downer with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Turkey season is coming soon. The most common accident while turkey hunting is failing to identify your target. Know the identifying features of a turkey. Make sure of your target and what lies beyond it before you trigger. Remember, safe hunting is no accident. For more information on hunter education, visit dnr.sc.gov.
You're listening to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. We're back in a moment.
You've put in the work for your education. The extra early, extra late, extra work. That's because you understand education opens doors to better pay, better opportunities, and a better you. Being educated about playing the lottery is no different. To be a better player, one who knows when to play and when to take a rain check. The lottery's a game, so let's keep it fun. Learn more at sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Call Lawyer Lisa. It's
difference with Lawyer Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hosteller Brown. Did you know it's possible to avoid probate court after you die, regardless of what you own? Why put your loved ones through a long, stressful public process when there are better options for your family? Visit lawyerlisa.com to seek some help.
Call Lawyer Lisa. Experience the difference with Lawyer Lisa.
7511 St. Andrews Road, Irmo, South Carolina.
Obviously, Mark Kingston, a very happy USC coach after the Gamecocks finished off that series win over Kentucky. Gamecocks have beaten Vanderbilt. They've beaten Florida in a series. Now they've beaten Kentucky in a series. Here's some of what the coach had to say to the media soon after that win yesterday afternoon at Founders Park.
Yeah, praise Jesus on that one. I'll start out like that. Obviously, to respond like that after a tough loss last night, a loss that could have gone either way, I just thought this was probably one of our best weekends of the year, clearly. Offensively, clearly one of our best weekends of the year. So really proud. Want to start with Dylan SQ. Tremendous outing. Tremendous. When we needed it, gave us everything we could have hoped for. So 6 1/3 shutout, and then Connor McCurry came in there with that power stuff. Just everything we hoped we would see today. Before we go any further, if I could just recognize Mr. Lindell Bradley, who was here this weekend, who I'm so proud to get to know and meet this weekend. Just want to welcome you back here. Enjoy the press conference as well. But what you've done, extremely impressive. So just want to thank you for being here all weekend.
Thank you, Coach.
Mark, you mentioned yesterday that you changed the lineup, get a little more offense in for defense, and 13 runs spoke for itself. So the defense really showed up with that new lineup. Just what could you say about them? And did you say anything to them about specifically defense yesterday?
You know, I mentioned this in the pregame show today. Every team has the 9 they think is their best defense. Every team has what they think is the 9 that's their best offense. And you generally try to find the best mix of that. And sometimes you have to make a sacrifice. If you think you need more offense, you've got to sacrifice a little defensively and vice versa. We just felt like we needed to jumpstart the offense a little bit and put our best 9 hitters in there that would give us some length in that lineup. It's obviously paid off for us this weekend. And defensively, you know, the good thing is our assistant coaches do such a great job doing homework on you know, spray charts and trying to figure out where the balls are most likely to go. So when you do that, range can be, you can mitigate, you know, maybe a little bit less range because of that. So I think you just combine all those things, and it just felt like the right time to give that a shot, and it worked really well this weekend.
What about Alan and Jack?
That's 2 weeks in a row, Dylan's 2 longest starts of the year. When he's going as well as he is today, what's working for him, or what allows him to kind of do what he's done these last 2 outings?
Well, after the 15-13 game last night, what you saw today were 2 very heavy sinker ball pitchers. And the first 5 half innings going to the bottom of the third, I mean, nobody could get the ball off the ground. And so you saw a lot of ground ball outs. You saw a lot of quick outs. And that's what Dylan is. Their guy, really good guy. I think he was 7-0 coming in today, and he heavy sink, and Dylan was the same way. And Dylan was just a little bit better today over the course of the game. So he threw strikes today. He only had 1 walk in 6+ innings. So when he does that with the movement on his fastball, you got a guy that can do what he just did against a top 5 team in the country.
Sure. Mark, I got 2 for you. You've talked so much this year about, you know, fine-tuning the lineup and trying to make sure everything's 100% the way you want it. These last 2 days, you started the same starting 9 pretty much. Do you feel like this is the best combination for a lineup you've had so far this year?
Well, I would say it'd be hard to argue that right now, right? And you still have a Will Tippett who's working to get back, but it's hard to argue with the offensive production we got this weekend. And it just felt like, okay, even as you get to the bottom of the lineup, some really good things can happen. And Cass is hitting in the 9 hole today and was 2 for 4 with a run on RBI. Took some good at bats and made all the plays defensively that I can remember. So you want to have your best team when it matters the most, when the games decide who stays and who goes home. And so we'll continue to look at everything that we think might get us a little bit better and then evaluate as we go.
And then with Petrie's at bat in the third, obviously he was called out, I believe. What did you see on that? And when he got back to the dugout, what was kind of the explanation on what he what happened on that play?
Well, that's exactly what they asked me on the SEC network. It's when you know that you're going to be on the SEC network, coaches interview the following inning. You hope nothing crazy happens that you're going to have to address when they ask you. As soon as that happened, I knew that would be the question when in the in-game interview. Basically, what you had there was a very excited Ethan Petrie, who saw the ball leave the park and forgot to look at the guy in front of him. He's hit probably 150 homers in his life, and that's probably never happened to him before, and it will never happen again because he's learned the lesson. But I think he in the back of his mind, I think he expected that the runner would be well off to second base, and that he wouldn't have to worry about it. And I've got to look at the video to see exactly where do I think the runner should have been. But at the end of the day, it's always the backside runner's responsibility not to pass the guy in front of him under any circumstances. And he'll learn from that.
What did it mean to have Mr. Bradley, the first African-American student athlete here? And I know he addressed the team. How do you feel like they responded to his talk and his message?
Well, we had our best weekend of the year, I would say. So I'm going to give him all the credit, and I'm going to invite him to be an honorary assistant coach if he's willing to take on that role. It meant, well, let's go then. Come on, let's go. Absolutely. No, it's obviously what he's done for this university is obviously now very well documented. I'm so happy that we were able to honor him with an entire weekend. He spoke to our team Friday, and our kids were really excited to meet somebody so noteworthy. And then he threw out the first pitch today. I didn't get the radar reading, so I don't know how fast it was. It looked pretty good, though. Looked like you could play back in the day. And look, you can't argue with the impact he's had on our university. And so just really happy that we can honor him with such a great weekend, because based on the body language of Lindell and the family, looks like they had a great weekend, and I'm so happy about that. So happy.
I think you were 2 for 2 on replay calls today, critical calls there. When you request a replay, do you do so kind of with a feeling that you're right, or you're hoping you're right? And when you're right, what's the feeling in the dugout for you?
Well, there's a few things that go into that. Number one, I tell our players, give me the signal if you're about 90% that it's going to go our way. So I trust our guys. I trusted Petrie. He seemed pretty confident. Body language, you can read the body language of a player on, are they just selling you a line, or do they really believe in what they're telling you? And I thought his body language was really good. And then the one with Cole, too, I walked by Cole towards the umpires. I was, trying to figure out what to do. And he said, Coach, I think I got in there. And so, number one, you trust your players. If they tell you we should look at it, we look at it. And my second thought on that is I have yet, knock on wood, I have yet to ever run out of challenges, right? So, and late in the game, you can go to an umpire if you're out of challenges and say, hey, I still think you guys need to look at that. So until I run out of challenges, I'm going to be pretty aggressive with using them, because you can't take them to the next game. You can't store them up. So if you think there's any chance on a play that might help you, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to roll the dice, and you really don't have anything to lose.
Okay, Mark Kingston, he is not afraid, Chris, to use those challenges, man. He'll use it anytime, anywhere, when it's appropriate.
And that appears to be a flaw in the system, though, don't you think? The last thing we need is more replay in any game. And if you go through your challenges, and he was spot on both of them yesterday, but if you go through them and then can still go to the umpire late in the ball game and get them to look at it, even though you're not challenging it, that appears to be a problem in the system that needs to be fixed. Once you run out of challenges, that should be it.
Yes, I think I would agree with that. Then again, you want it to be right, don't you? Now that we've got this technology, but you want it to be right.
Yeah, but we've seen the cost of getting it right delays the game. I mean, players aren't perfect, coaches aren't perfect. I don't know why we think umpires should be.
Yeah. Okay, hit the break on Sports Talk. Speaking of perfect, Jim Toman coming up.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Some clouds sticking around overnight. We'll have a low temp dipping down to 60. Tomorrow, look for increasing clouds as the day moves along. The high will top out at 85. The rest of the work week includes high temperatures in the upper 80s. Will flirt with 90 degrees, and evening lows will be in the lower to mid 60s. I'm Cal Moss with your on-point local weather.
Are you looking for free checking and free savings? Dave Ramsey here, telling you to go see my friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They're not a mega bank that's so big they lose the ability to treat you like a human being. Palmetto Citizens, you're not just a number, you're a member. Join today at any of their 14 locations or at palmettocitizens.org. Federally insured by the NCUA.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting 3 law enforcement officers serving a warrant for a felon wanted for possessing a firearm were shot and killed, and 5 other officers were wounded in a shootout at a North Carolina home. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings says the officers killed the suspect in the front yard of the suburban Charlotte home on Monday after he fired on them. Prosecutors say they will not retry an Arizona rancher whose trial in the fatal shooting of a Mexican man on his property ended last week with a deadlocked jury. The jurors in the trial of George Allen Kelly were unable to reach a unanimous decision on a verdict after more than 2 days of deliberation. The judge declared a mistrial on April 22nd. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 146 points. The Nasdaq rose 55. More details at srnnews.com.
I've learned a lot in my years doing this, but I've never had my eyes opened wider than when I met the folks from Broker Solar and went to see their job sites. Everything I thought about solar power, well, I was wrong about. Now, I'm on board 100% as long as it's done right. Don't let the media, don't let the politicians guilt you about solar power. You want solar because it actually will save you money and give you some power literally and figuratively at the same time. It's amazing technology. What a great way to get rid of your monthly power bill. No more power outages. Instead to buy a generator, you just rely on solar batteries from Broker Solar. Listen, I'm sick of having politicians tell me about green this, green that, but solar technology has advanced so much. So if you want to learn more, why don't you call the folks over at Broker Solar? This isn't some national thing. They are local. They're located right in Lexington. In fact, I've known the owner's family for many, many years. They are great. Online, it's brokersolar.com or call them 807-7417. That's 807-7417 for Broker Solar.
Hey friends, Victoria here from the Hangar Provisions. Start your day the right where flavor takes flight and mornings soar with delicious delights. Sink your teeth into our mouth-watering options, crafted with love and locally sourced ingredients. From Tuesday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday from 8 to 4, our doors are open to serve you breakfast, craft sandwiches, coffee, fresh juices, and smoothies. Stop by to try a meal with a journey worth savoring. Visit us at thehangarprovisions.com, located in the heart of Lexington at the Shops of Flight Deck.
As we celebrate 10 fantastic years at Sweet Comfort Services, we're cooling you off with unbeatable deals on all SEER 2 and high-efficiency AC equipment. Hey Point family, in this ad and get a thorough spring maintenance check from our expert non-commissioned techs for just $95 for your first system and a chill $45 each additional system. Look us up at sweethvac.com or call us at 331-8143. Celebrating a decade of keeping you cool and comfy. That's the Sweet Comfort promise.
I was thinking about the things that matter to me when it comes to calling the plumber. First, most of us call the plumber out of a need, often a crisis. So you want reliability. Then, we're in a vulnerable place already, so you want someone you can trust, someone who will be fair in their pricing and handle things professionally. These are the reasons I feel comfortable recommending Franklin Plumbing and Drain Cleaning. See, they've been out to my home. They've been out to my brother's home, too. Franklin Plumbing and Drain Cleaning did such a great job. And you know, maybe this might not matter as much to some people, but they're locally owned. A lot of these plumbing companies you've heard of used to be local, and now they're owned by big national or even international conglomerates. Working with a locally owned company matters. It keeps your pricing down, and the money stays local here in the community. Josh and his team at Franklin makes customer service their top priority. I trust them. You can too, especially during these vulnerable times. Online, franklinplumbing.sc.com or call them 799-2222. That's 799-2222.
Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
All right, it is time for another edition of Hardcore Baseball Facts and Talk here on Sports Talk with the coach Jim Tobin. just a bit outside. Coach, good evening. How are you?
Phil, I'm doing great, man. I saw a lot of good baseball this past week, and I wanted to talk to you guys and let the fans know what went on in the state of South Carolina. But it's boiling down. It's down to 2-3 weeks, and then the tournaments. And we're trying to figure out who's the top 8 national seeds and who's going to host. And I think that 16 guys get to host, and who's in regionals and who's out. So there's a lot of guys on the bubble from the outside looking in, and then there's a lot of guys that have solidified themselves. But these next 2-3 weeks are going to be a blast because there's a lot of things that are going to happen, good and bad, for a lot of teams.
Well, what'd you take from this weekend involving, let's go with Clemson, Gamecocks, Coastal, and Charleston?
Absolutely. That's the top 4 in the state right now. They're all doing well. But, Clemson, to me, is showing toughness with 2 of their starters out in Chufo and Taylor. They're showing some toughness. They had went to Georgia last week in a midweek, and they lost in 15 innings, 4-3 against a good Georgia team. But it lasted 5.5 hours. I think they started at 7 and ended up after midnight. So it was a marathon game. Probably took a little bit out of them, but then they go all the way to Louisville, and they beat Louisville 2 out of 3. And it was interesting. They won 12-11 in that first game against Louisville. At one point, they were losing 11-4. Okay, so they're showing some dang grittiness right there and toughness. I like that from a team. And then the middle game, they lost 6-7. And I don't know if you saw it or not, but one of Louisville's guys, I don't know if he hit a home run to win it or hit a home run, but he must have talked to the first baseman, Clemson's second baseman, Clemson's shortstop, Clemson's third baseman, the catcher, and he basically showed his ass. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word or not, but he basically did not, for me, respect the game. Well, Clemson comes back on Sunday, and what do? They 10-run roll them in 7 innings. They won 17-7, and all 9 starters for Clemson had a hit. So I don't know if it's the baseball gods or karma or whatever, but that kid from Louisville, he got exactly what he had asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And Clemson, you got to give them credit. I mean, long game, middle of the week at Georgia, and then traveling on the road, and down that first game by a lot, came back, and then lost the next game, and then they hammered them on Sunday. So Clemson goes to 34-9. I think there's only 3 teams in the country with more wins than that, maybe 4. Their RPI is 4. They're 15-6 in the Atlantic division of the ACC, which is first in the Atlantic. I think they're a game and a half behind UNC because they lead the overall ACC at 17-7 now. But anyway, Clemson's in a great shape to be a top 8 national seed, which means if they win a regional, that means they get to host the Super as well. So that's the good thing about trying to be a top 8 seed. Now, they're going to have to finish strong, but right now, if it were to end right now, the season, they would be a national seed. They've been up there for a long time now. South Carolina probably had their best weekend to date. They had some rest. They had no games in the midweek, which means their pitchers were well rested, and they needed to be because Kentucky can really hit. But South Carolina had a heck of a comeback too. They were up 4-1, and I think it was the 9th inning. And Kentucky was up 4-1, and South Carolina 3 solo shots to tie it up. Then Kentucky scored another run, and then South Carolina hit the walk-off. So South Carolina showed a little toughness there, and they went on. They won the first game 6-5. They lost 13-15. And then on Sunday, they just blew Kentucky's doors off. I don't know if anyone saw that coming. It was 10-0 and, looked easy. But I think that was the biggest series for South Carolina. It helped their cause to host. You got 12 or 13 games left in the tournament, and they're looking to host. Well, their RPI went up to 11 from 14, so that's certainly good enough to host. Heck, if they finish really strong, they may be looking at trying to, be a top 8 national seed, but they'd have to really roll the table here next 3 weekends. But they have to avoid what happened to Coastal Carolina had that bad week.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a bad week during the season, but you can't have a couple of them, or you just play yourselves right out of the regional. Coastal lost 11 points in the RPI. They're down to 24. Thank God that last week they went up about 10 or 11, but they lost 2 games which was unusual to be on the road at Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska. They lost 2 close games to Creighton, who's pretty good, and then they lost, I think, 7-3 and 5-4. They lost in 10 innings the second game to Creighton. And then Troy just came in. Troy's hot right now, and Troy won 8-6, 11-4, 15-3. And you never make excuses in college baseball, but I'm thinking Coastal was still they were still in Central Time or something, because they were struggling this weekend. But the good part about it is they're still 24 in the RPI, well in the they're definitely still in a regional at this point. But, just like Clemson, they have no midweek game this week, which I think they need a little rest. But they have to travel to Southern Miss, and Southern Miss is a game ahead of them in the Sun Belt. And Southern Miss RPI is 46. I've played at Southern Miss before. It's not an easy place to play. And really, the last 15 years, you're looking at 2 of the top mid-majors in the country in Southern Miss and Coastal, and they're going at it this weekend. It's an unusual deal. I don't know if you looked at the Sun Belt records, but, Coastal and Southern Miss are, they're usually the top 2 teams, and right now, they're like they're like tied for 4th or something. And, you got Coastal with a 24 RPI, and James Madison has a 30 RPI, but I think they're like 5th or 6th in the Sun Belt. So it's a strange year for that conference, and it's going to, it'll all shake out in the wash here in the next couple of weeks and in the tournament. But the committee's going to have their hands full of RPI teams as opposed to teams that did better in the regular season, and who gets in and who doesn't get in. But I think Coastal, they need a good weekend against Southern Miss. I think that they're going to do it. I think Coach Gilmore's the type of coach to get them ready to go. And sometimes that bad week isn't bad to have, and maybe you get it out of the way, because you don't want to win 20 in a row and then go into the regionals. It's hard to maintain that. But they can't afford another bad week. They went 0-5, and they got to regroup. The upstart in South Carolina is College of Charleston. They have gone 17-2. Which last time I checked, that's pretty darn good. They've only lost 2 games out of their last 19. Coach Holbrook's squad is up to 31-11. They're tied with Wilmington for 14-4 in the CAA first place regular season, and I think they beat Wilmington 2 out of 3, so they would have the tiebreaker to win the regular season if it ends up like that. But they're definitely, this past week, they beat the Citadel 5-4. Now, if they lost that one, that would have been tough, because the Citadel's RPI is 230 or something. But they beat them 5-4, and they lost to Campbell in the first game, but then they won the next 2. So that's another South Carolina team showing some grit. And, Campbell's a good program, and they were down 0-1, and then they end up winning the series at Campbell. So they're up to 50 RPI from 64. They got to get it to about 40, 45, or they can always win the tournament. But they're squarely in the regional discussion for me right now. I'm not on the committee, but when they like teams that are hot down the stretch. Now, I took a peek at it. I used to coach with Coach Holbrook for a year. They've got to go to Towson, and Towson is, even though Towson does not have a good record and their RPI is bad, it's difficult to play up there on the road. I mean, there's going to be 10 or 11 people in the stands, and it's like, what are we doing up here?
Mhm.
But they got to play them for 3. They play the Citadel again midweek. That's not a good RPI game. It needs to rain that day.
Yeah.
And they don't need to lose to the Citadel and lose about 10 points in the RPI. They may beat them and lose some points. And then they got 3 tough games against Northeastern, who's always good. They got a good RPI game at Duke coming up in a week or so. And then they're at Elon. So they have 11 games left. And they also have the CAA tourney. And, they're right now, I think they're in a regional, but they have to finish strong, and I'm pulling for them to do that. So you're looking at 4 teams right there that if things were to end right now, you'd probably have 4 teams in the state in the regionals. And that's before the tournaments, and there can be some upsets in the tournaments. Wofford's a 72 RPI, 28-13. USC Upstate is 88, 28-16. They're 13-5 in the Big South. And then Charleston Southern's RPI is 150, and they're 18-23. So the other teams, they're going to have to win their tournament if they're in their tournament. Presbyterian's RPI is 195 now. They're even at 22-22. But their record in the Big South is 12-6. Pretty good conference record for PC. Then Winthrop is down now. Them and the Citadel are battling it out for the worst RPI in the state. And I don't say that. I mean, college baseball is very difficult, but in certain leagues, if you don't play a good non-conference schedule and then you play a bad conference schedule, all of a sudden you don't have a good record, and all of a sudden the RPI really dips. So Winthrop is 231, and they're 15-23, and they got a tie. They're only 4-11 in the Big South, and then the Citadel 232 RPI, 17-25, and they're 1-14 in their conference. Quick shout out still, I know we talked a little bit, but the Friday night comes back for South Carolina and Clemson were awesome. I mean, at one point, Clemson was down 11-4, and then South Carolina down 4-1. They hit 3 solo homers, and then Kentucky goes ahead, and then they hit a walk-off. I mean, that was incredible. So, shout out to both of them, and they both won their series. So it's a huge win for Clemson and South Carolina.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
Chris has got we got about 2 minutes, but Chris has got a question for you.
Yeah, Coach, I was curious about the situation in our states. Yesterday, we had 3 run rule games. So I'm wondering if we're starting to get towards the end of the season that pitching is starting to lack a touch. And did you like the move that Eric Backets did? Because Aiden Kanak has been his best pitcher all season, but he's also been their most utilized, 59 innings this season. He didn't pitch this weekend. Do you buy into sort of load management at this time of year, even for your frontline guys?
Yeah, well, I think the head coach and the pitching coach always talk about what the workload is for their pitchers, and they figure it out, and that's what them guys get paid the mega bucks for. But it always helps at the end of the year if you have them run rules, and I think it's a good rule in college baseball because some of these games are 15-2 in the 7th inning, and you got to keep playing them if you don't have that run rule. But some of the conferences have the run rule for the whole series, I believe, and some of them just have it for Sunday, and I think it's a conference rule. But anyway, you're talking about a smart coach, and he knows how to manage the pitching staff. And same thing with all these other teams. But, some of the pitchers are beginning to add up into some innings, and they definitely need to be ready for the regional. So at some point, you got to give these guys a little bit of a break. I was going to say a little shout-out. Cole Mathis at the College of Charleston. He raised his average. I don't know how you do this, but in one weekend, he raised his average 50 points. Against Campbell, he went 11 for 14. Now, he hit 3 home runs, 7 runs, 10 RBIs. He's a first baseman catcher. He's one of the better hitters in the state of South Carolina. But I don't know what kind of scouting report Campbell had on him, but it didn't work. 11 for 14. The other thing I wanted to say is a shout out to one of my former recruits. I usually don't go all the way to Middle Tennessee State, but they put a freshman in the lineup. He hasn't been playing a whole lot. And the guy, Brett Von Dolan, in one game, listen to this. This is like a career for me. He was 3 home runs. 2 of them were grand slams, and he set the school record in one game, 10 RBIs.
Wow.
Basically, yeah, that's like a week for good hitters and a month for us bad hitters. But, man, good job, Brett Von Dolan, Middle Tennessee State, Blue Raiders, and it's good to see him. 10 RBIs, 3 home runs, 2 of them grand slams. He'll remember that for the rest of his life.
All right, Coach.
Other than that, I think we're getting really close to trying to figure out host regionals, national seeds, and who's in, who's out. And this is when college baseball is fun. Just trying to figure it out.
We call it, and we coined it here, just like we came up with March Madness a few years ago. We call it mayhem. College baseball mayhem. Okay.
Well, that's definitely starting, and it's going to be fun down the stretch. Let's keep it going.
Looking forward to being with you. Thank you, sir. Talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Coach Jim Toman never saw a clock he couldn't follow, whether it's a pitching clock or a on-the-air clock. No, we appreciate it. I just jump in sometimes and guide him from a time standpoint because time is of the essence. I want to get to the recruiting, and we want to squeeze in few comments from Eric Bakich. So give you the recruiting report here on Sports Talk. It is brought to you by Seawells. When you're planning that special event, whether it be a wedding reception or a birthday party or corporate outing, an awards banquet, just let the folks at Seawells handle all the hard work for you. Make it easy for you, make it hard for them, but they make hard easy. And their phone number is 803-771-7385 online at SeawellsCateringSC.com. Daily lunch and buffet. Cranking up again this week, every day, Monday through Friday, from 11 till 2. Make sure you check it out. Recruiting-wise, South Carolina officially announced the signing of 6'10" Alabama transfer Nick Pringle today. Pringle announced his commitment to the Gamecocks Saturday while in for his official visit. Sunday, the Gamecocks missed on LaSalle transfer guard Jameer Brickus. When he committed to Villanova, he visited USC, then he went up to Villanova. Some out there in the expert world had him pegged for the Gamecocks. Didn't happen. Gamecocks also missed on Tulane transfer guard Colby King. He committed to Butler before making a reported scheduled visit to USC. And USC target Mount St. Mary's transfer guard Dakota LeFew over the weekend committed to Georgia. The Clemson women signed 5'4" Addie Porter, transfer from Chattanooga, where her coach at Clemson, where he came from. 8.7 rebounds per game last year. Tigers also signed 6'2" North Carolina transfer Anya Poole. Played in 116 games with the Tar Heels, averaged 5 and 5 in her career. Former Clemson forward Jack Clark over the weekend announced he's headed to VCU. Of course, Clemson guard Alex Hemingway put his name in the transfer portal, John. Furman signed 6'7" Mason Smith, Huntersville, North Carolina, 15, 8, and 3 last season. Belmont transfer Cade Tyson commits to North Carolina, brother of the former Clemson star Hunter Tyson, over 16 points per game last season. USC women offered 2026 6'1" J.C. Abee of Frisco, Texas football. Clemson offered cornerback Grayson Littleton, 6 feet 180, Tampa. He visited Sunday. He was at Alabama the day before. He's named the top 10 already: Florida, Iowa, Michigan State, Kansas State, Kentucky, Ole Miss, UCF, Alabama, Penn State, and Rutgers. That was before the Clemson offer. He also made stops this spring to Ole Miss, Miami, Iowa. Safety Jordan Young has Clemson in the top 8, along with Alabama, Florida State, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, NC State, and Michigan. Former Clemson offensive lineman Zechariah Owens committed to Colorado over the weekend. Clemson target safety Dallas Golden of Tampa committed to Notre Dame. over the weekend. Over the weekend, USC target tight end Hayden Bradley of Beaufort, Georgia, committed to Ole Miss. Linebacker Mantrez Walker of Beaufort, Georgia, who listed USC among his favorites, committed to Colorado. And over the weekend, Nevada transfer receiver Delvon Campbell visited the Gamecocks. And North Carolina transfer quarterback Tad Hudson, probably never heard of him because there was a guy named Drake May playing ahead of him. He's headed to Coastal Carolina. And Gaffney offensive tackle Shed Surratt was offered by Colorado. There you go, recruiting on Sports Talk, brought to you by Seawells. How about just 90 seconds, Chris, with Eric Bakich?
Yeah, that's about all we've got from him last night after their win, their impressive series-clinching win when they beat Louisville yesterday 17-7. A run rules them in 7 innings, and afterwards, head coach Eric Bakich met briefly with Clemson media.
Proud of our team, proud of our response. Emotional loss yesterday for a lot of different reasons, but just kind of the way things happened. And our guys came out today with just a look in their eye that they were not going to be denied. And it's one thing to feel that way, and it's another thing to just come out and be in attack mode from the first pitch on. And the quality at-bats that we had, the scoring in multiple innings, that was just a heck of a response. And I thought we were in that, we were the aggressor, and we needed to be, because they've got a very good offense. Louisville has a very good offense, and they can score quick. And there were moments today where you could feel like they were on the verge of putting up some big innings, and they had the 1-4 spot. But our guys just kept their foot on the pedal and found a way to get 17 runs, and that was awesome. And a lot of big hits, not just the home runs, but the 2-out RBIs and the quality at bats up and down the lineup. Every guy on the team had multiple quality at bats. And then highlighted by some big performances. Cam Canarella with 2 doubles and a homer. Alden Mathis had 4 hits. Jacob Hinderleiter had 6 RBIs. Timmy Obertop, Tristan Becerra, all big days. Blake Wright doing his thing. Jack Crichton on the barrel all day long. Just guys doing a really good job. And what was a good offensive weekend for us. So it's tough to play on the road, tough to win on the road, but for us to come out of here with a series win, we will take it. So proud of our guys' effort, and look forward to the games coming up.
All right, Eric Bakich, good stuff from him. Pressure, though, don't you think the pressure is huge on Clemson to get to a Super?
Oh, my gosh. Yes. There's no question. I'm not sure there's more pressure on any baseball team in the country, especially with the tradition of Clemson baseball. Used to go to Omaha on a regular basis, have not gotten out of the regionals in, 10-plus years? When's the last time they got to a Super?
Been a while.
It has been a while. And so, I think, and now Eric Bakich may not feel it as much, relative newcomer to the position, but I'm sure Tiger players feel it from the fan base, because they won't be satisfied, and understandably so. This is a great season they're having, just like last year was. They won the ACC tournament. They looked like the team to beat going into the postseason, and then they can't get out of their own regional. And until they get over that hurdle, I'm not sure Clemson fans are going to be comfortable with how good the regular season is, because, as we know, you're judged by what you do in the postseason.
Now, one thing he's done, though, they followed up that ACC tournament championship from last year with a fantastic regular season so far now. So no let up. Injuries, as you heard Coach Toman mention, injuries, so far they've been able to overcome the loss of starting shortstop and a starting outfielder to this point. For their sake, you kind of hope it doesn't take away from them down the stretch. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, everybody, for being with us. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.